Hello and welcome, I'm Oles Gerjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. Today we're discussing an agreement on a prisoner swap between Kyiv and Moscow-backed forces. The exchange is expected to take place within a month, and this was announced by the deputy head of Ukrainian President's office, Vadym Prystaiko. To talk more about this and other aspects of the Kyiv-Kremlin relations, we welcome to our studio today Andriy Veselovskyi, head of the Center for International Studies at Hennadii Udovenko Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine and Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine. Hello and thank you for coming. So, the agreement was reached during the meeting of the foreign policy advisors to the presidents of Ukraine, Germany, France and Russia in the framework of Normandy format. This meeting was held on July 12th in Paris, the day after the first telephone conversation of Presidents Zelensky and Putin. And then it looks like the details of this agreement have been reached at a recent Minsk talk round that was held on July 17th. So this is going to be an exchange of 69 citizens of Ukraine for 208 people requested by the other side. So my first and the most important question is, do you think that this exchange will eventually take place?
A million-dollar question, as Americans like to say.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to caution a little bit about the word agreement you have used. It's not the agreement; it's the understanding. I would call it that way. Even after the announcement of this understanding, Ukraine's ombudsman Denisova told that some details in the lists of political prisoners are still to be checked, are still to be verified again and again. So I think that the economic and political situation now changed dramatically since the last presidential elections, and that is why the exchange will take place. We don't know about 208 or 210. We don't know about 3 weeks or 5 weeks. But the whole atmosphere, the whole situation is such that both sides will go ahead.
So there is some consent, and basically there is a will from both sides.
There is a necessity.
There is a necessity, and there has always been a necessity, let's say, from our side, for sure.
There was a necessity from our side. There was no such a necessity from Russia. There was maybe, but they did not want to show it. And now, finally, they came to the understanding that this is a necessity.
But can we trust the Russian side in this case? Because we do remember that the previous attempts for these prisoners' exchange have been rejected or sabotaged, if I may say so.
That is why I mentioned about the political and economic changes during the last 3-4 months, linked with the first, from Ukrainian side, our election process, a new president, and eventually new Verkhovna Rada, which will come soon. And in Russian Federation, there were also some dramatic changes, internal changes, and the pressure of the Western countries remains. And finally, all these aspects made Kremlin to think deeper about what to do with in relations with Ukraine and the aggression in Ukraine.
We do have a soundbite from the new power, so to say, from Ukraine's president's office about the prisoner exchange that Ukraine is so much awaiting for. Let's watch.
We have agreed to exchange a certain number of our captives during 1 month. President Zelensky was saying about 10 to 10 or 15 to 15, though we are keeping our options open for the number of people. Our task now is to exchange, to return our people home, and to unlock the process of exchange all to all, which was blocked until now.
So the telephone call from Ukrainian side to Kremlin, I mean Zelensky Putin talk, was of course a trigger to the topic of exchange as such, and to the return to the tables of Normandy format as well.
Do you believe that the decision was actually reached on that level, and then the message was kind of passed or directed to the advisors? So that could be some kind of an official statement of the advisors to the president, and then maybe this process would continue during the Minsk talks, and then Moskva would meet actually Denisova. What are your thoughts on that?
Those are technicalities. The most important thing, and I would insist on that, is that in both sides there was a growing understanding of the necessity of these of these moves, and we remember quite well that during the campaign, President Zelensky declared the return of Ukrainian sailors and Ukrainian political prisoners home as his first and most important task. And he was doing that and repeating that after the campaign, and that is why he made a call to Vladimir Putin, and that is why he insisted on this point during his 3 most important international trips last month. I mean France, I mean Germany and Brussels. So in all cases, he was starting from Donetsk and Crimea and return of our people, as well as readiness to send prisoners, which were in fact criminals from Ukrainian point of view, back to Russia.
Let's also discuss the soundbite of Vadym Prystaiko. Well, he said that President Volodymyr Zelensky is very particular, and he would like to exchange 10 to 10, 15 to 15, but the president's office is keeping the options open for the number of people. So we do see that Zelensky and his administration have different approaches in addressing this issue. Which one would you support?
Well, I don't think that there is a difference between the two persons or sides. I think this is the evolution of the mind of the office of the president. When Prystaiko...
This is a positive sign that the office can disagree with the president, for sure. I'm just curious.
It means that at the beginning there was a talk about equal exchange. Then there were additional talks and additional thinking, and the same office or the same president changed his mind, and it was good, because in fact, if we get back, if we receive back all our political prisoners, that's what we want most. We can of course give easily those prisoners in our prisons. First of all, we don't need to feed them. Second, we send them back to Russia and let them think what to do with them. And this is, I think, absolutely fair exchange.
Well, this Prystaiko statement came after Russian Ombudswoman Tatiana Moskal-Kova met with Ukrainian counterpart Lyudmila Denisova. That meeting happened on July 15th. I would like to ask you, what are the outcomes of that meeting, and does this swap involve the 24 Ukrainian sailors?
In separate cases, Ukrainian side underlined that Ukrainian sailors, Ukrainian military personnel in Russian prison are not to be exchanged. They are to be freed. Yes. This is an important point because Ukraine never recognized, and our partners in the West never recognized
the captivity. Of the sailors.
Military prisoners should be given back without any sort of exchange or concession or conditions or whatever. It is the obligation of Russian Federation, which was, by the way, stamped by the International Tribunal
for the law of the sea, right?
For the law of the sea. So it's very simple. It's a separate matter.
But yes, and now we come back to the political will and understanding from the both sides, because yes, we've talked that now maybe there is this turning point where we can find an understanding and the exchange might take place. But at the same time, if we're talking about political will, the Moscow court has recently extended the pretrial detention of the 24 captured Ukrainian sailors, breaching the international law, breaching basically the sentence by the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. So basically, Russia doesn't adhere to any sort of obligations, commitments, and just international law. Let me repeat that.
Let me add, breaching the international law not for the first time, and not for the second time.
But now, since the power changed in Ukraine, yes, that's what I meant.
The explanation is simple. If they don't make this prolongation for the captivity of our sailors, that they would have been freed within 2 weeks. But the exchange, the process of returning them to Ukraine may take longer time. So, in order to avoid them being free in Moscow in 1 day, they made this sort of prolongation. So, it's an artificial legal trick which does not change much Russian policy at all, but which does not prevent the possibility for our military sailers to come back. So it's just a technical trick.
Do you think this is the last extension?
Well, there are...
Until October?
Well, God knows with Kremlin, I'm sorry to say that, but I would say 90% they would be back.
90%?
Yeah. My thinking is that the political understanding of both sides is to do that.
You mean that they would be released before October?
Yes,
or
yes,
after
of course. Before October, Russia is a big maritime country. They cannot violate law of the sea so visibly, so arrogantly. They need to have a way out, and this way out is here because of the pressure of the West and because of the formal finalization of the process of criminalization of the act of our Ukrainian sailors. So formally, for the Russian citizens, everything was done in just way, and formally it will be, and informally it will be done in a different way towards Ukraine and the West.
And Ukraine can expect some positive results.
Well, yes.
Great. This is a great note to conclude that topic on, but I have another issue that I would like to focus on just very briefly because we ran out of time. Battle with passports. So Vladimir Putin recently has simplified the procedure for obtaining Russian citizenship by the residents of Ukrainian, Donetsk and Luhansk regions, and then there was the retaliatory message and measure from the Ukrainian side from President Volodymyr Zelensky. So Ukraine now will start issuing passports to all ethnic Ukrainians around the world who would like to obtain the Ukrainian citizenship. So what are your thoughts on this? Could this be an aggravation in relations between Kyiv and Moscow?
You know, our legislation in this sphere of passport and citizenship, is very, very weak and I would say not well crafted. It's an obsolete legislation, and we have to remake it accordingly to today's necessities and today's challenges. In a way, psychologically, it could be related to the move of Vladimir Putin, and this decision of Vladimir Putin, absolutely illegal, and would have no implications on Ukraine and Ukrainian citizens. But this kind of legislation in Ukraine, as many others, unfortunately, is to be improved. Is to be remade deeply and thoroughly. It's not a quick process. We have to study the legislation of adjacent countries, first of all, of our major allies and partners, in order to apply it in that way that the non-friendly countries would not have access to our citizenship. And it is underlined in the words of President Zelensky, in the commission of the President Zelensky to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Well, let's see how the situation will develop and how much of a threat will this issuing procedure of Russian passports will become. Thank you so much for your comments, and thank you for being a guest today in our studio.
Thank you.
That was Andriy Veselovskyi. He's the head of the Center for International Studies at Hennadii Udovenko Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine and Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine. Thank you for watching Head to Head, and stay tuned for more with UATV.